Thanks for wasting our time today. I understand this is a marriage proposal, but we do not approve. Please give up and go home now. When we went to my boyfriend's family home to announce our engagement, his mother glared at me, speaking down to me like this. I knew from the start that his parents didn't like me, but I can't back down here. I steeled myself and proceeded to introduce myself to my future in-laws. My name is Marina. I'm 26 years old and work in the general affairs department of a manufacturing company. I have a boyfriend who I've been dating since last year. His name is Travis. He's 3 years older than me and we work in the same department. He has a soft expression and his kindness shines through when he smiles. That's what made me fall in love with him. Since we both live alone, we often visit each other's places and enjoy our dates on the weekends. We've built a happy relationship. My parents' home is nearby, so I often take Travis to their place to hang out. My parents really like Travis, and when he visits, they always serve up great meals than usual. Travis gets along well with my father, and I thought that everything would be fine even after we got married. However, Travis has always been reluctant to introduce me to his parents. When I asked him why, he looked troubled. "Could you wait a little longer? My parents are nothing like yours. I wish I had been raised by people like your parents." When he said this, he looked somewhat sad. I wondered if he might be on bad terms with his parents. I decided to wait until he was ready to talk about it. I wasn't in a rush to get married, and I thought it would be best for him to tell me when he was ready. But life doesn't always go the way you want it to. One holiday, while Travis and I were heading to our favorite restaurant, a surprising turn of events unfolded. As we were guided to our seats by the staff, Travis suddenly looked shocked and began to fidget uncomfortably. "What's wrong?" I asked. He was at a loss for words and could not answer properly. Well, he said, looking away. Wondering if I had done something wrong, I felt anxious. Just then, "Oh, isn't that dear Travis? I haven't heard from you in a while. I was wondering what you were up to." A woman in her 50s approached our table, chatted amiably with Travis, and then looked at me appraisingly. She had distinctive downturned eyes that made it feel as though she was glaring at me. Perhaps her hair, tied neatly at the back, accentuated the slant of her eyes. As I returned her gaze with a puzzled look, she let out a dismissive chuckle. "Are you really hanging out with a country hick like her, Travis? You're such a good kid. If you don't like it, you have to tell her straight. Otherwise, girls like her won't get the hint." At her words, Travis's face tensed up. He glared back at the woman and defended me. "I won't tolerate any insult to her." But the woman, giving me a pierced look, said, "It's a pity my boy's been fooled by a girl like you. Leave Travis alone right now." Then she headed toward the cashier, paid her bill, and left the diner. "What was that about?" I asked, looking at the departing woman. Travis responded with a weak voice. "That's my mother. A few years ago, because of her, I had to break up with someone I was considering marrying. She said she didn't want to get married if it meant dealing with a mother like that. So that's why she had such an attitude. Yeah, if you decide to continue being with me, there will be a lot of complications. Should we break up here? Don't worry, I won't bring my personal issues into work, and I'll make sure you won't have any trouble." Travis looked pained. "I see. But I still want to be with you, Travis. Do you really want to break up with me?" Travis looked shocked at my words. "You know I have such a mother. If you marry me, it will be a burden on you." "I don't mind. I think that's part of marriage. And we don't have to live with her, right?" "We will never live with her. If she insists, I'll request a transfer at work, and we can move far away." Travis looked at me very seriously. I returned his gaze with a smile. "Then I feel reassured. Is it strange if I propose to you?" "Are you sure?" "Yes, of course. I want to live with you in the future," I said, feeling heat spread through my body out of embarrassment. I was sure my face was turning red. "I feel a bit upstaged, but I'm really happy. I want to be by your side for the rest of my life." Finally, Travis smiled, and I felt relieved. Afterwards, Travis and I decided to introduce ourselves to my parents. They were delighted and eagerly asked how we had decided to marry. This meant I had to talk about my soon-to-be mother-in-law. We tried to sidestep the conversation, pretending to be shy. We were hoping to divert questions about my mother-in-law, but my mother wouldn't allow it. Have you already introduced yourself to Travis's parents, or is that still to come? Travis and I were taken aback by her question. No, I don't plan on informing our parents about us getting married. What? Why not? Travis's answer caused my mother to gasp in surprise. Because I'm sure my parents would never approve of our marriage. At this point, my father gave us a stern look. That's not acceptable. Marriage is a union of two families. Your mom would be devastated if she found out you were married without her knowledge. You both should at least greet them once. If they still refuse, come talk to us. We'll certainly help you out then. My father's words were strong and reassuring. However, Travis gave me a look of concern. I'm fine. I said this with a smile, hoping to ease his worries. I thought if we couldn't overcome this hurdle, we wouldn't be able to find our true happiness together. Later, Travis informed his parents that I would be coming to greet and introduce myself. They didn't seem welcoming, but he managed to arrange the meeting anyway. Travis's father was a CEO, and they lived in a large house. The yard was also expansive. When I stepped in, a large dog started barking. Travis approached with a smile and petted the dog's chin. The dog quieted down and let me pet him too. While we were playing with the dog, the front door opened and his parents came out. His mother, with her sharp gaze, exuded an intimidating aura, and his father, equally high-handed, looked down upon me. "Don't touch our dog! You're disgusting!" Those were the first words out of his father's mouth. Without even a greeting, he started berating me. I felt extremely uncomfortable. "How dare you speak to her like that? If you keep acting this way, I won't hesitate to cut ties with you." When Travis said this, his parents glared at me, but didn't make any further unpleasant remarks. They invited us into the house. I found it a bit strange. Travis, with just one look at his face, you would think he's a kind person because of his gentle eyes. I thought he took after his father because his mother had upturned eyes, but he didn't resemble his father at all. Things like skipping generations in genetic traits are not uncommon, and there are plenty of kids who don't resemble either parent. So I thought maybe it's best not to delve too much into that matter. I entered the house, and as I was looking around, a middle-aged man in a suit appeared. "Welcome home, young master." Upon seeing Travis, he bowed to greet him. His kind smile was contagious, and I found myself smiling back at him. "It's been a while, Mr. Williams." "You're all grown now, young master." Mr. Williams looked at Travis and smiled warmly. It was the first time I saw Travis genuinely smile since we arrived at this house. He then introduced me to Mr. Williams. "This is Mr. Williams, my father's right-hand man. To be honest, he's more like a father to me than my own. My father never showed much interest in me, so Mr. Williams often took care of me." "You're the boss's son. I was just doing what was expected of me." "But you've always had a soft spot for me, haven't you? I have to say, I like you more than my father." Travis chuckled. Seeing him laugh innocently felt like a first. As we were talking, my mother-in-law emerged from a room in the back of the house. "Marina, what are you doing? Come here right now!" she shouted angrily. She glared at Mr. Williams. "What do you think you're doing? Slacking off from work? How many times have I told you to stay away from Marina? I'll make sure my husband hears about this. You better head off to work." I understand. I'll do as you say." With that, Mr. Williams nodded and left the room. As an office worker who only does clerical work, I wonder if being the CEO's secretary means you have to visit the CEO's house and be at the beck and call of the CEO's wife. Travis glared at his mother and protested. "Why do you always treat Mr. Williams so harshly? How can you be so rude to someone who's been working so hard for Dad?" "Quiet! You should just do as your parents say. I'll deal with that man. Now come over here." Following my mother-in-law, Travis and I moved to the living room. Travis and I sat on the sofa across from my in-laws, and my mother-in-law was the first to speak. "Thanks for wasting our time today. I heard you two are here to greet and introduce yourselves to get our blessing, but we don't approve of you two getting married, so just give up and go home." I was prepared for the snide remarks. This didn't bother me at all. "No, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule for us. Travis and I love each other. It's natural for two people in love to get married. Don't you agree, father-in-law and mother-in-law?" I replied with a composed smile. However, my mother-in-law gave a deliberately exaggerated sigh. "Ugh, you don't understand anything about marriage, do you? Since our last meeting, I've looked into you. You're a mediocre woman who, after graduating from a nothing special average university, joined a small-scale company. And despite your lack of remarkable skills, you've managed to ensnare my Travis, haven't you? Do you really think a woman like you is good enough for our family? Good match is what's important in marriage." "Mom, Marina and I work at the same company. We work the same way in the same place. If Marina is incompetent, then so am I. We're a good match." "Travis, you're different. There must have been a reason for you to lower your standards and join that company. This woman only had that option available to her. And besides," my mother-in-law smirking, turning a mocking gaze at me, and continued, "Seems like you come from a poor family. After our money, are you?" At my mother-in-law's insinuation, I felt my blood boil. I had resolved not to let anything she said upset me, but when she brought up my parents, I couldn't hold back my anger and found myself retorting. "Please don't just assume we're poor. What's wrong with calling a spade? Living in a run-down 50-year-old house, driving a car that was released 10 years ago. Did I hit a nerve because I'm spot on? This is why I can't stand poor people. My family home was built by my great-grandfather, who was a carpenter. It's precious to us. As for the car, we simply like it, and have kept it running smoothly. There's no reason for us to be labeled as poor. You did your research, didn't you? You must know what my parents do for a living. Yes, I know your father is a university professor and your mother is a high school teacher. I acknowledge they have respectable jobs. However, there's too much of a disparity between our families. Listen, Travis is slated to take over his father's business someday. Don't think for a second that the daughter of mere educators can marry my son." With that, my mother-in-law cackled loudly. That's when Travis stood up. His face was transformed into something I'd never seen before. A scary expression replacing his usual gentle smile. "It was a waste of time trying to talk to you people. I'm cutting ties with you. There's no way I could forgive you for bad-mouthing someone I care about. Marina, let's go. There's no point in trying to persuade them anymore." Travis grabbed my hand, and we left their house. "I'm sorry. I'll explain to your parents that we couldn't even have a conversation with them. Please don't say you won't marry me." I could only nod in response to Travis's desperate plea. Travis and I went straight to my parents' house and told them what had happened as his parents. Travis had anticipated this might happen, and had brought along a voice recorder. All of my mother-in-law's snide remarks were recorded, and after listening to them, my parents pondered a bit, and then said, "Sure, the way his mother spoke was not nice, but you two are giving up too easily. We'll try to work out a strategy, so you go ahead and keep making your wedding preparations. If you, as adults, have decided to marry, you don't need parental approval. Still, it would be best if you could get Travis's parents' blessing for your marriage." As my mother calmly stated her opinion, Travis and I felt our spirits settle, and we managed to nod in agreement. We decided to leave matters concerning Travis's parents to mine, and discussed our future together. 1 month later, my parents called us, and Travis and I visited my family home. As we entered, we found Travis's parents and Mr. Williams seated around a small table. When we joined them, the room became rather crowded. I thought Travis's parents might start making snide remarks again, but they sat quietly. It was my father who filled us in on what had been discussed in our absence. Travis's parents looked into us, and so we decided to investigate them in return. His parents married 30 years ago, after his mother became pregnant. At that time, his father had just started his company. Mr. Williams, who was an ordinary employee at that time, had also supported his father devotedly. As my father was explaining, Travis interrupted. All that is common knowledge in our family. Mr. Williams started as an ordinary employee, but was promoted to the position of my father's personal assistant in recognition of his achievements. My mother raised me almost single-handedly, while my father was struggling with managing the company. It seems Mr. Williams supported not just my father, but my mother as well. As Travis finished speaking, my father nodded. Mr. Williams indeed supported your family in a very dedicated manner. Now, the topic is going to shift a bit. I am a genetic researcher at the university. Genetically, children inherit half of their DNA from each parent. Even if the child and parent look very different, they are certainly inheriting half of their genes from each parent. What are you getting at? Travis threw a questioning look in the middle of my father's explanation. I also wondered why my father started talking about this. My usually mild-mannered father had a stern look on his face as he addressed Travis's parents. Please, hear me out. I hired a detective to conduct a background investigation on your parents. Your father works diligently, and Mr. Williams was always there to support him. Your mother is devoted to housework, so much so that it was inspiring. However, when I looked at your pictures, something seemed odd. Neither of your parents have a widow's peak, but you, Travis, do. This trait is known as a dominant trait, meaning a child with a widow's peak can only be born to a parent with the same feature. Moreover, don't you think Travis looks a lot like Mr. Williams? Particularly the drooping eyes and the widow's peak. So, I thought maybe, and I called your parents here to talk. After my father finished his explanation, Travis looked at his parents and Mr. Williams in astonishment. Unlike my father, I am a French teacher like my mother, and I am good at French. I never noticed the difference in their foreheads. Even if I did, I am no expert in genetics. After a period of silence, Travis's father began to speak. 30 years ago, I was so consumed with my work, I neglected my family entirely. That was when my wife told me she was pregnant. I had been hiding about my infertility from my wife. I was angry about my wife's affair, and she was angry that I had kept my infertility a secret. After a big fight, I told my wife that if I were to raise her child as my own, I would forgive her infidelity. In turn, she said that if I forgave her infidelity, she would forgive me for hiding things. Then, I made Mr. Williams my personal assistant and kept him under watch to prevent my wife from continuing the affair. After Travis's father spilled everything, he sat there with a blank face as if his soul had left his body. On the other hand, his mother began to sob. I loved Mr. Williams. I wanted to raise Travis with him. Travis is a treasure that I created with a man I truly loved. I can't hand him over to a woman I don't know. I absolutely will not allow this marriage. As his mother wiped her tears and glared at me, Travis gave her a contemptuous look. I've always been aware that I wasn't loved by you, Dad. I felt my mother's abnormal obsession towards me. I often wished that Mr. Williams had been my real father. But what's this now? You three are disgusting. Mom, I no longer want to think of you as my parent. And even if Mr. Williams is my biological father, I won't recognize you as such. I won't forgive any of you. I will cut ties with you all and marry into Marina's family. As Travis uttered those words, his mother rose and began to cling to Travis, crying. That's not allowed! Travis is mine. I won't hand him over to anyone, especially not to some commoner. Let's live together, then I will allow your marriage. So don't say you're marrying into another family. As Travis's mother grabbed his arm, I swatted her hand away. Ma'am, can you please stop? Travis is clearly uncomfortable. Do you understand how much he has been hurt and troubled because of you? Probably not. Because in the end, all you care about is yourself. If you only betrayed your husband to be with Mr. Williams and continued to deceive Travis, I wouldn't say anything. Because that's a matter between just the three of you. But for you to interfere with Travis's happiness, I'm not going to sit here and let that happen. Why don't you put his happiness first? If you don't like me, that's fine. But if you just want to manipulate him as you please, you're failing as a mother. From now on, I will make Travis happy, so don't get in our way. After I blurted that out, his mother began to cry again. She was cursing at me, calling me a cruel woman. But Mr. Williams was comforting her, and we decided to discuss future matters at a later date. A few days later, Travis's parents officially apologized to my husband and me, and my parents. They accepted our marriage, and Travis and I officially turned in our marriage certificate. Travis moved into my house. In the end, it seemed Travis's father could not forgive his wife's infidelity. Too much time had passed to ask for compensation, but they divorced and split their assets. Mr. Williams also resigned and moved far away with Travis's mother. His mother's luxurious lifestyle came to a sudden end, and she was forced to live the impoverished life she had always looked down upon. She occasionally sends letters asking Travis for financial help, but he ignores them entirely. Travis has severed ties with his father because they are not blood related. He has no intention of becoming Mr. Williams's adopted son now, so legally he remains to be the son of his father. They seem to have come to terms with this. Once Mr. Williams resigned and Travis's mother was no longer around to support him, Travis's father's company performance plummeted. He resigned from his father's position, and no one knows where he went after that. A year after marrying Travis, I saw that his parents' house had been put up for sale. We had a wedding ceremony, but because of Travis's complicated family issues, we kept it small, with only close family and relatives. Even so, it was a memorable occasion, and I was satisfied. Now, we have been blessed with a beautiful daughter, and I have quit my job to devote myself to raising her. My parents occasionally visit and help take care of our daughter, which is a great help. Travis and I plan to support each other and raise our daughter with love.